Let me ask you something. When you think of Apple, that little glowing apple on the back of your phone, whose name comes to mind? Steve Jobs! I'd bet the farm on it. And friend, you would not be wrong. The man was a visionary who changed the whole wide world. But here's what I've come to believe after all my years. Apple is the giant it is today because of one more person. A name most folks never once thought to thank. You want to know who he is? Of course you do. Pull up a chair, because here's the truth. Steve Jobs gave Apple its dreams. But this man? He gave it the power to actually deliver them to 1 billion people all over this earth without a single stumble. He didn't have Steve's flash, no. He had something just as rare. A cool, clinical, flawless precision. And he took a company that was all but dead and turned it into the most valuable company in the history of the world. His name is Tim Cook. Not a dreamer, a master of getting things done. A precise, methodical mind from a little town in Alabama, where Steve could see the things that didn't exist yet. Tim could build them and ship them and lay them right there in the palm of your hand. The two of them fit together like a hand and a glove. And without him, friend, that phone in your pocket might not exist at all. There's a wonderful book about him by a writer named Leander Kahney, and I read every single page. Oh, did it teach this old man what real genius can look like? Because it doesn't always look the way you'd expect. So come on back with me now. Let's begin. Picture it. The year is 1998, and Apple, the Apple we all worship today, is dying. I'm talking 90 days from bankruptcy. Done. Finished. Now here's Tim Cook. He's got himself a fine, safe, well-paid job at a big computer company. Smart fella, engineer, raised working class in the Deep South. The kind of man who knew the value of a steady paycheck. And everybody around him is saying the same thing. Do not leave that good job for some sinking ship out in California. One chief executive he trusted told him flat out, "You'd be a fool to do it." But Tim Cook had always believed something. He believed that following the herd was a terrible thing to do. So he sat down with Steve Jobs, just the two of them, and 5 minutes in, 5 minutes, his gut told him, this is it. And he listened to his gut. He took the job nobody wanted, at the company everybody had given up on. And what did he find when he walked in those doors? Oh, a mess. A beautiful, terrible mess. The company was drowning in its own product. Warehouses stuffed with unsold computers, gathering dust. One of his own people admitted it later. When it came to running operations, we were terrible at it. Terrible. Most folks would have turned right around. Tim Cook rolled up his sleeves. Here's the first thing he understood, and oh, it's a good one. He looked at all those warehouses full of unsold machines, all that money just sitting there rotting, and he called it something I'll never forget. He called inventory fundamentally evil. Evil! Now, why would a calm, polite Southern gentleman use a word like that? Because he understood what piling up really costs you. And he explained it with the homiest little picture you ever heard. He said you've got to manage it like you're in the dairy business. Because if it gets past its freshness date, you've got a problem. You hear that? Milk on the counter. That's how he saw a warehouse full of computers. And so he went to work emptying them out. When he started, Apple was sitting on a month's worth of unsold product. Within months, he got it down to days. Eventually, 2 days. 2! He beat Dell, the company everybody said could never be beaten at this game. $400 million of dusty machines melted down to 78. And Leander Kahney tells it plain in his book. The stuff piling up in a warehouse or in a life is the silent enemy of everything you're trying to build. Now here's where I want you to lean in, because this next part, this is where Tim and Steve become two halves of one machine. See, when Steve Jobs came back to Apple, he did something bold. He took a company making dozens of confusing products, and he slashed it down to just 4. 4 computers! People thought he'd lost his mind. That was the dreamer's gift. Focus. And Tim Cook, he took that very same idea and ran it straight through the back of the company, where nobody was looking. Hundreds of suppliers, he cut down to a handful. Parts that didn't match, he made them share. He flew around the world, sat with each supplier, drove a hard bargain, then charmed the socks off them. Steve simplified what you could see. Tim simplified everything you couldn't. 2 halves of one beautiful machine. And doing fewer things better, friend. That is its own quiet kind of power. But oh, my favorite. Let me tell you about the airplanes. It's the holiday season, and Apple's got this gorgeous new computer, and they need to get it into people's hands fast. So what does quiet Tim Cook do? Months ahead of time. Months! He goes out and books $100 million of air freight. $100 million! Nobody had ever done such a thing. And here's the kicker. When the holidays come around and his competitors go looking for planes to ship their computers, there aren't any. Tim Cook bought the sky. They were stuck on the ground, watching Apple fly right past. He had a saying, and write this one on your wall. In business, as in sports, the vast majority of victories are determined before the beginning of the game. Before it even starts. You can't always control the timing, he said, but you can control your preparation. The win gets decided long before anybody's even keeping score. And how did he run those quiet hours? With the details. Lord, the details! This man was never a screamer, never a yeller. He'd just sit there, calm as Sunday morning, and ask you a question. You answer it, right? He asks you 10 more. They used to say if you sat in a meeting with Tim Cook, he'd point at one number on a spreadsheet the size of a bed sheet and say, "What's this little figure here? On column D, line 514. What's the root cause of that?" And heaven help you if you didn't know. That right there is the part most folks skip clean past. The boring little details nobody wants to look at. That is the exact spot where greatness sits hiding. Now here is something the world gets wrong. It thinks genius has to look exciting. Because operations, supply chains, spreadsheets, shipping schedules, it isn't flashy. Back then, the glamorous designers got picked up in limousines and stayed in 5-star hotels. The operations folks? They took a taxi. They got the 3-star. The world saved all its applause for the dreamers up on the stage. But underneath that stage, Tim Cook was building the machine that held the whole thing up. Answering emails at 3:45 in the morning, flying to China and back like it was nothing, checking and checking and checking again. You ever do work like that? The careful, methodical kind that nobody throws a parade for. Hold on. because that so-called unexciting work was about to do something the whole world would notice. There's one more lesson, and it tells you everything about the man. One day, in a meeting, a problem came up with a factory over in China. And Tim said, calm as ever, someone should be in China driving this. The meeting kept going. Half an hour later, he turns to one of his executives, a fella named Leander Kahney, and he says 5 words. "Why are you still here?" And that man got up, walked out, drove straight to the airport, booked a flight to China with no return date, and he didn't even stop home to pack a clean shirt. Because in Tim Cook's world, when something needs doing, you don't sit on it, you don't wait, you go, now. And then came the hardest day. Steve Jobs got sick, and in time, the dreamer handed this quiet man the keys to the whole kingdom. When Steve passed, Tim said something that just breaks your heart. "There's not a day that goes by I don't think about him." And the whole world licked its lips and predicted doom. Apple's finished. The genius is gone. The ops guy can't possibly carry it. But here's the beautiful part. Tim Cook never tried to become Steve Jobs. He knew he was a different kind of genius, and he never apologized for it. He emptied the warehouses, he sweated the details, he prepared and he prepared and he prepared. And on the 2nd day of August, 2018, that methodical man from Alabama did something no human being had ever done in the history of the world. He made Apple the first company ever worth $1 trillion. The dreamer gave Apple its vision. The master gave it precision. Neither one could have done it alone, and together they made the dream last forever. So let me ask you, friend, and I want you to sit with this one. What's the careful, methodical work in your life that the spotlight always skips? The planning, the preparing, the getting every little thing right. And have you been told, or have you told yourself, that it's the lesser gift? Because here's what Leander Kahney's book about Tim Cook taught this old man. The world throws its parades for the dreamer, the visionary, the one with the dazzling idea. And oh, they have earned it. But a dream is only a dream until somebody prepares it and plans it and builds it, careful and exact and ready. The visionary and the master. And the truth this story proves is you need both. So don't you dare believe your kind of genius is the small one. The methodical mind isn't the helper to greatness. It's half of how greatness gets made. If this story warms something in you, do me a kindness, give it a like and subscribe so you can sit with me again for the next one. And go on and find that book, Tim Cook by Leander Kahney, and read it slow. There's a whole life of quiet, brilliant wisdom in those pages. Now you go be exactly who you are out there. And remember, it takes a dreamer to light the spark, but it takes a master to keep the fire burning. And this world has never, ever needed just one of them.